Today on Turf Business TV, I'm joined by the course manager at the London Golf Club, Lee Sayers. Lee, thank you for taking time out of a busy Monday morning for you. Let's start with, how things going at the moment. We're kind of coming out of lockdown in terms of golf anyway for COVID. What's happening with you guys?
Very positive in a way. We are inundated with golfers on a daily basis. We're doing much better than we would normally with regard to number of rounds played. So that's a very positive. There are some issues to do with our corporate side of business, but day to day we're as busy as we can be. So that's the take home for us.
And is that members or is that green fees or is that a mix?
It's a combination of members and their guests and what you would call green fees as well. So we initially, when we returned, we just started with members, then we allowed them to introduce their guests, and then we are taking daily fee paying people that are keeping us busy. Lots and lots of interest.
For you and your team then, what's the impact for you guys currently? How's that showing itself?
I guess a bit weather related. We are in a good position now, but it was quite difficult going from very, very wet. We are quite a wet site, although we have very well constructed greens and tees that are sand construction. So they're not really affected by the wet, but it was a peculiar one to go from 5 months of very wet weather with very few rain-free days to go into 10 weeks of dry weather with very few rain days. So although we've got a full irrigation system, it's not the same. And being running with less staff created some more issues as well. So it has been quite difficult. It's been quite demanding. Happy where we are at now. Got great playing surfaces. But yeah, it's been quite demanding.
So you were running with less staff. Is that kind of you back to a full team now, or is it still kind of restricted?
Close to the full team. The three that I'm down at the moment, two of those three are due to one maintaining the 12-week procedure, one whose partner is a frontline medical person, and one further. So I'm three down really, which is not too bad.
You can cope. And so you're kind of optimistic about the way the course is going to hold up and how your team's going to hold up over the next few months, yeah?
Definitely. I do think it's going to be a very long season now. I think we're going to hopefully go as late as possible. It would be super good if we could get a really helpful autumn. The direction we're being given by a lot of our corporate people, they'd still like to do something with us, but it will be at the end part of the year. So I envisage a very busy September, October, maybe going into November.
Well, let's look back a bit further now and let's talk about your career. I think, as I said to you earlier, you've had an unusual journey here. You started out working in a bank. So, obviously that wasn't quite for you then, was it?
It wasn't, no. As a teenager, I'd worked a few summers and Easters and what with my dad, who was an electrician, and thought that was quite a hard way to earn a living, having seen sort of feast and famine with his business really. 1 minute he's working 7 days a week, then a couple of months in the winter if things go quiet, so that seemed a tough way to work to me. And although I didn't mind the work, I was quite good at maths at school, and numbers and finance seemed a sensible way to go until I started doing that job.
So you stuck that for a little while, and then you tried your hand at something else, which the noble profession of advertising sales, which I understand very, very well. Wasn't quite for you, that one either.
No, the job satisfaction was very short-lived. That satisfaction of making a sale and maybe hitting your targets every month, but it took a while to dawn on me that I just wasn't particularly dealing with an end product. I can look back on that now and see that, but at the time I couldn't. And although I worked for two really good organisations with good training and good people, it just felt, it wasn't quite fitting.
So then a big move for you, both in terms of, I guess, your life and in terms of location. You ended up in Australia.
That's right. Yes. Family had applied to emigrate, and back in the 80s, 90s, things like that did take a while to come through. And then by the time my parents were given residence stamps, I too, as part of the family, likewise similar, and I got married at young, and we just took the opportunity to go, and it was a great 3 years. Australia's a wonderful country. I learned a new profession. It gave me a chance to experience something different in the outdoor world, sort of the outdoor lifestyle. But it wasn't home. So yeah, great 3 years. But greenkeeping out there is a lot different. Warm season grasses, great environment to grow grass as well. So really learned a huge amount. Great grounding for me.
So you're out there, you got that opportunity to start. What attracted you to the role in the first place then?
Sports had always been something. I've always played all outdoor sports, and it was that chance. Actually, when we'd gone, I actually had we'd fallen on our feet a little bit with friends who were renting us a place very, very reasonably, and I actually had probably less earning expectation, so was able to not be concerned with what I was earning, but rather do something which I wanted to make as a career for the rest of my life. So that was the ability there to start. It's something completely new. So that's how that came about.
So you spent 3 years getting a good grounding in how to make the turf grow in Australia. Decided to come back home. What was your kind of step back into the UK job market then? Did you go straight into greenkeeping over here?
I did, yeah. I was real lucky. I think we arrived back on the Friday. I'd written a couple of letters before I got back, and had an interview on the following Monday and a job at Royal Blackheath. So yeah, very, very lucky there. Paul Copsey, a Kent section bigger committee member, had put me on to a lead he'd heard. And yeah, sure enough, I slotted straight in there, and started at Royal Blackheath back in '94. So I had actually chased a few other leads from Australia. I was an international Bega member and was getting the magazine. And the big thing that was in the magazine during that time was the project going on here at the London Golf Club. Construction happened sort of between '91 and '94. And although I didn't secure a role straight away, once I was back, it enabled me to get a foot in the door. Blackheath was great, but it wasn't a permanent post. It was a seasonal role. So when I got offered a full-time role here 6 weeks before grand opening, yeah, it was a good decision and a good jump to make, good move to make.
So your starting role at the London club then, that was what?
I was an assistant greenkeeper. So yeah, I was starting pretty much at the bottom. We did have various roles, but yeah, that was, I worked my way through from there. So it was a great place. There was a lot of really talented people here then, just as there is now. But it was probably more of a worldly crew, guys from all over, used to move around the whole world really, not just Europe, with regards to new constructions and new roles like that. So I did meet a lot of people that have all spread far and wide now, some of them in serious roles around the world.
So your journey is continuing at the London Golf Club then, and you've worked your way up to course manager. What have been the key differences that you've seen with the types of venues that you've worked at? Obviously, there must be a big difference between Australia and the UK to start with.
Yeah, lots of differences. Yeah, Australia, the advantage, we did have cool season grasses out there on the greens, creeping bent grass, but they were POA-free greens, which is a big problem for the UK. The POA just couldn't withstand the high temperatures in the summer of sort of plus 40 degrees. So that made management of the greens itself easier. Being a bit like the States, a lot more outdoor sort of sports going on. The probably fewer golf courses, but they did have a high member number. So I was at a course where the main time I was in Australia, where we had 10 staff and a really good standard. So again, I was at a place where things were done really well, done properly, and I learnt lots. So set me up for coming back. Probably didn't hinder me that the two of the senior people at the London club at the time, one was a Kiwi, one was an Australian, and they had known I'd been through the 2-year turf certificate in Australia, and worked at some courses, so that probably helped. And they were just open to people that were really just in the boat I was in. I was super enthusiastic, new to the industry. We were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. I was young, so fitted with probably what they were after, and it just went from there, really.
So at that time, would you say the UK or Australia was ahead in terms of the expertise and the knowledge?
It's a two-part question. So Australia was ahead, mainly because of the growing conditions you get out there. So, particularly on the west coast where I was, the winter is very mild. The summer's actually probably more difficult to manage than the winter. So that's a big help. But at that time, 94, a lot of you will know that really golf venues and also turf industry, I think, was moving quickly and improving a lot. Yeah. Some say for the worse. There was a lot of new changes with regard to fertilizers, extra irrigation systems, things like that. Some of the purists will say that has changed some of the grass species that we've used. But there's no doubt about it, that's dragged the whole golf industry through, whether you agree or not with the changes that were made. Some of those courses that came in at that time in the south, especially East Sussex National, Chart Hills, London Club, lots and lots of other venues as well, which improved rapidly. Probably around the time that Nick Faldo was making his name big time in the industry, and Europe were doing very well or doing a bit better in the Ryder Cups. So partly to do with those things, I think.
Is there one thing in particular that you learnt in Australia that perhaps has had an impact on how you've dealt with things in your career back here?
I think it'd be moisture management, yeah. Or people say, well, that's just irrigation. It's not just that. There's both sides of that. There's drainage as well. You get both those. If you can manage the moisture of your growing mediums when it's very wet, and you can keep them to the point you want them, and conversely when we're very hot and you've got wilt and all kinds of other issues, you can get both of them right. I think that'll stand you in good stead.
During your time, it's been, was it getting on for 30 years now in the industry?
29, yeah.
Okay, so who's had the biggest influence on you professionally then?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, probably from my learning how to work with people, probably a couple of guys I worked with who actually weren't very good managers. I've probably learned a huge amount off them in how not to manage people. I've worked with a lot of great guys. I could name them all here, but I'd be worried about missing 2 or 3. I have worked with a lot of good guys, but there were 2 in particular that were very poor leaders. They were actually good greenkeepers, in fairness, but they were very poor leaders. And although I was in junior roles at the time, I could see they didn't get the best out of the team. And that's where it's all about, really.
Do you see that still? I mean, I think one of the issues with the industry is we get some people that, and I guess it's the same with lots of industries, that are great at, managing the turf. But when it becomes, you're great at managing the turf, so that puts you in the frame for, a head role, whether that's a groundsman, greenkeeper, course manager. Do you think there's an infrastructure there or a training program that, helps enough for that transition?
They are there, but there are also quite a lot of organisations, whether it's golf clubs, private schools, whatever, that perhaps the course manager, the head groundsman, doesn't get the support that he needs. I've been lucky to have a secretary in particular, but probably early on in my career, who I think could probably see that I had the ability to manage the golf course, but perhaps lacked a few other whether it was some diplomacy or whether it was to know when to push hard or whether to ease back and compromise. And I think I've had some good guidance along the way there of people that have enabled me to sort of mature and progress. I certainly would admit in my late 20s, a couple of early roles, yeah, I probably come unstuck because of a bit of immaturity and a bit of headstrong will to just crack on and get things done. And the world don't always work like that, you know. So yeah, there are the roles there, the IOG, Bega, that they're doing lots and lots of training courses to help us all, the webinars, there's lots there, the magazines, the trade, everything has improved massively in my 29 years. But it's having the time and the inclination to sort of take that up and really grasp it. Not everyone's got that time or that commitment.
Or that support from their managers and their owners, yeah?
Yeah. And the direction, I think the direction's another one that gets lost a little bit in some of these. You see some guys, amazing work, massive commitment to the roles that they're carrying out, but you sometimes see them going down the wrong path. And I think that's got to come from above. You know, the people I've always looked to provide direction and ultimately provide the resources to do the job. So, you know, loads of guys out there I follow on Twitter and read around, and seriously impressive people that are getting some serious work done. So,
I mean, that whole kind of support and training issue is something that gets quite a lot of airtime at our Turf Business Summit, and I know obviously you've been heavily involved in a couple of initiatives at the summit, particularly the developing talent part of it. Would that be the area that you think is most in need in the industry, or are there other areas that you identify?
That's a big part of it, definitely, and it's something that I really enjoy as well. Worked with numerous people that have gone on to great roles. I've worked with numerous guys actually that haven't gone on but are experts in their field, and I've worked with some guys that are great assistant greenkeepers, but that's the level they want to stay at, but they still have the interest to progress, do the job better. So it doesn't matter on the level, but it does matter that all of us that have been lucky can get there and pass on that information, empower people. You know, it's looking for the good things they've done, not picking out the one bad thing they've done. You know, we can all do that and sometimes find ourselves in those mindsets, but it's very important. I know all my crew here, you know, there'll be 20 good things they'll do a day. They might get one thing wrong. If they're only doing one thing wrong, they're doing pretty well. So yeah, it's a role I've really enjoyed that, and it's one of the best things when you see someone go on to be a big cog in a part of another club. You're sad to see them go because you've got to replace them, and you know that's down to how you do your succession management. But it is one of the best things, one of the most fills me with the most achievement when you've seen a young guy particularly come through, and then he's gone on and progressed. So yeah, something that I've really enjoyed with Turf Business.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope that continues, Lee, and we'll pick up on that when the summit comes around next time. In terms of the day-to-day job and the challenges that you face there at the London Golf Club, is there anything particularly that vexes you, or is something that is you know, the one that gets you waking up at 3 a.m. going, what the hell am I going to do?
There are lots of things. We've all got our challenges. For those that have been here and know, it is an enormous site. You know, we're something like 60 hectares of cut grass. The site we're actually on now is 500 acres. It is just huge. It is huge. So I do get levelled at me a few times when guys know the number of staff we've got. You know, you're lucky, and we are lucky. You know, I'm lucky to have the resources we've got, but there are two absolute monsters to look after. And the time just drains away. That's probably the biggest thing. Great believer in staff management, and the staff comes first. You can have a great course and you can have good kit. If you haven't got the staff right, you've got no chance. So have got the staff right, got some really good team members here. but it's just two monsters to look after, and we get there, but like everyone, I've worked at a place where there was 2 of us, and I worked here back in the day when there were 40 of us. It's the same thing. We're all trying to punch above our weight and get the job done, and that's probably the most demanding bit. The technical bits, yeah, there's lots of bits there: grubs, disease, water management. There's a lot of things, but getting the job done ahead of the golf and producing day in, day out. That's the bit.
So you're not just involved in looking after and maintaining golf courses, you've got an estate to manage as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we got 7 other pieces of land around us of varying degrees. A lot of them are grazing. One here is a stable. They mostly look after themselves, but even minor issues like fencing and accidents that vehicles have going through these areas, there's always something to. We have a bridleway as well. That's about 3 kilometres long. Lots of the walkers and horse riders local are the first to say when something's not quite right there, and that's other things to look at. It's all part of the job.
So having said that, you enjoy developing talent, and there's nothing better than seeing one of your guys go on to bigger and better things for themselves. What advice would you give anybody coming into the industry or who's on the early part of their journey of what would help them progress if they are ambitious to do so?
Yeah, I think you really, the ball is in their court. I think there are so many ways that you can gain more experience. You can educate yourself. You can put yourself in a position where you become more and more desirable to hopefully your current employer. But if you're not happy with that, you don't feel you're getting the direction or the resources that are there, put yourself in a position where you're enticing to other people. I do hear I go to a lot of local course visits and days out at Hadlow and whatever, and I do get a few guys moan. And you've just got to sort that yourself. You've just got to put your foot down and do the best you can, and people will snap you up. Good people get snapped up straight away in our industries, I believe. So do something about it, and use the facilities there, whether it's CPD. Like I say, the webinars now, I'm an old boy, but the webinars for the young guys are so good. They can all go on your CVs, and they're great. BTME, IOG, everything that's there and available.
And in terms of your ambitions, both maybe for your courses there that you're looking after and you personally, what's left for you to achieve now? Not writing you off yet, Lee, but what's the next step?
Interesting one, that. Yeah, I'd like to think I'm a very young 50. So, lots left. I've got a massive drive and ambition in everything I do. I'm very lucky. I've got a great family and I've been so lucky throughout my whole career. So very happy here. It's a great job here at the London Golf Club. It is a very demanding role, but I'm enjoying it, and I've got really a very, very good team. So very happy here for now. But who knows? I've had a couple of colleagues I've known over the years that have branched into different sectors of the industry, and that's interesting. Who knows? Watch this space, I think.
And from your point of view, what's the mark you've left on your venue, your courses then?
I think that's a funny one, that. So really, the time I'm here, I'm just lucky enough to be here for the time, and I try not to leave a mark on the course. I think that's the designer, that's the owner, that's down to them. I will say I hope to leave the people I've worked with a very clear opinion of what's right and what's wrong. And I think if people put their best foot forward, do their best and work hard and look after each other, that to me is just as important as anything else. So it's all about the people, without doubt.